Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Let's Talk Vibes podcast, where we speak soul contracts, illuminating the path to higher understanding. I'm your host, Lauren.
And I'm Yana.
In this episode, we're going to really be getting into the nitty gritty of how we create and interpret charts. So, in episode one, we went over what is the soul contract system. Then in episodes 2 and 3, we went over what are the numbers of the soul contract system. And in this episode, we're really getting into what is a soul contract, as in the chart that we look at. And if you are familiar with astrology, which I'm guessing a lot of people here are, you're probably familiar with the concept of a natal chart or a birth chart. And so this is really the same concept, except instead of looking at when and where you were born as the information we use to create the chart, we are looking at the name you were given at birth. So we are going to take the name typically as it is written on your birth certificate in order to create your birth chart, which in this system we call a soul contract.
Ooh, let's get into it, girlfriend.
Okay. So, for everybody who is listening, I am a big listener for podcasts myself. I get it. We actually have a visual presentation to go along just to really help to understand because this is a modality that is new to people. They don't know what this even looks like. And it helps to make a lot more sense if you can see and follow along. So, again, if you want to listen to it, go ahead. But then we do recommend later when you're able, jumping on YouTube and really taking a look at these visuals. I think it's going to help it to make a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Without further ado, let's take a look at that.
I gotta say, this is like such a fun part for me as a practitioner, soul contract practitioner doing this work, because when you get
Yeah.
to this point, it's like you've done it enough to where as soon as you hit that create button and you create this chart and you see the frequencies, the major energies that are playing
Yeah.
out, it's like your brain's already like, okay, I got it. Like I know what's happening.
Yes.
So for everybody watching, what we did was we took a fictional name. It's just a name
Mhm.
that we made up. Okay. So it's not anybody in our lives. It's not us, just a random name.
If your name happens to be Victoria Eleanor Jones, welcome. This is your chart.
So essentially, what happens when we create a chart is we take your full birth name, exactly how it's written on your birth certificate. You do not leave out middle names. You include the juniors. You include every single thing. The
The
third,
third.
yes. So
Mhm.
everything goes on this chart. And then what we do is we assign each letter of your name a number value, right? Which is
Yeah.
really like a sound frequency.
Yeah. It's not
And
random. This has to do with Hebrew, right? So we've mentioned in this before that this corresponds to the frequencies of ancient Hebrew, the sounds from that language. And so that already had the correspondence to the number. So what I call the invisible part is that we're essentially taking your name as it's written in English and saying what's going to be that equivalent sound for Hebrew. And then that already has a number that goes along with it. So that's how we get from the letters to the numbers.
mhm. And then on the next screen, we'll show you how we assign all of these numbers. Right. So what happens is if you see right now, you see all the different arrows, lines pointing to the different areas. So we take your name, first letter, for example, in Victoria's name is a V, which is assigned the number value of 6.
Mhm.
And we apply it all around the Star of David, starting with the physical karma aspect, and then we go clockwise. So the V number value 6 goes into physical karma. The I, which is number value 10, goes into spiritual karma, and so on until we use all the numbers and all the letters of your name.
Yep.
Then the fun
S-
begins, right?
Yeah. So now we have all of your letters and numbers on top of the chart around each of the triangles, if you will, of the little aspects. And then what we start to do is we're going to reduce them. So because this system has 22 numbers in it, we are going to be looking for the first number 1 to 22. So as we reduce, if you look at the physical karma, all of the numbers that were there that got assigned. We had a 6, a 10, a 14, a 5. Well, that's more than 22. It added up to 35. So what we do is we take the 3 plus 5 reduces to an 8. Well, that's a number between 1 and 22 that's within our system. So we're going to assign it an 8. But then as you'll see, there's always two numbers. It's never just one number all by itself. Well, 8 is already a single digit. We can't reduce this any further. So now we have 8, 8, and this is what we refer to as a double number.
Right. And then, for example, to give of a combination number, the only aspect in Victoria's chart that has a combination number is her physical goals. And essentially, those were the numbers 6, 5, and 6 that were assigned to it, which totaled 17. Because 17 is less than 22, we're going to keep that 17 and we're going to reduce it, which makes that then a 17.8. And that's how you
Yeah.
get that frequency, that specific frequency in that chart.
And this is then what we call a combination number. So every chart is going to have a mix of combination numbers and double numbers. Well, actually, I should say sometimes you see charts that are all combination numbers or are all double numbers. Do you actually want to spend a moment to kind of just say what that feels like for somebody who has all of one type in their chart?
Yes. So when you do have a double number, for example, in this chart, the 8, 8, actually she's got 8, 8, 5, 5, 9, 9, 4, 4, 6, 6, all these numbers. What happens is it creates a more rigid, more beeline, if you will, type of experience. So, for example, physical karma 8, 8, one of the main lessons that you'll go through that is all about grounding your emotions and about letting go, right? You're going to experience those energies, that feeling coming through the same exact way every time until you break out of that negative aspect of that chart, of that energy, into the positive aspect.
Right.
Whereas when you have a 17.8, now you're going to experience that frequency in many different ways. It's the same
Yeah.
lesson, but it's going to hit you many different ways.
Well, there are choices. An analogy I really like to use with my clients is that imagine you're a painter and if you have more combination numbers or double numbers in your chart, it's kind of like the paints that are going to be on your palette. So when you have a double number like the 8, 8, it's like saying, okay, your color is yellow. You're painting with yellow. And you can paint a beautiful painting with yellow and shades of yellow, but you only have yellow to choose from. Whereas the 17, 8, it's like the 17 is blue, right? And so you can paint with blue, you can paint with yellow, but then you can also mix those colors together and get the unique lesson of when they are blended, which is green. So now you have yellow, you have green, you have blue. Imagine how much more dynamic that can be. But then again, when you look at the chart as a whole, if everything is a combination number, every single aspect has combination numbers, it's like you have so many paints and choices on your palette. You're like, I don't even know what to create anymore. I'm overwhelmed by choice. There's no direction. What am I doing? But if every number is also going to be a double number, like Victoria almost has, except for one, she has almost everything is double numbers. It's like I'm really limited in terms of what my choices are. I feel like I'm given such a clear path. There's no deviation because everything is kind of almost restricted. It's so focused that can feel very limiting. So, what we like to see is, what can feel the most balanced is when you do have, 3 of one and 4 of the other. So, you have enough choice to feel like, okay, I'm not so rigid and there's this exact path that I must follow, but also not so much overwhelm of like not knowing any path at all.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we
Yeah.
move on from this, I really want to talk about how we calculate the soul destiny. Because I will say, I
Yes.
do get this question a lot, right? So, what you do is essentially you take the first number of each pair of numbers, right? So, the first, whether it's 1 through 22, and you you add all those up and you reduce it down to a number that's less than the 22. And then you take the second number from the set, you do the
Mhm.
same thing. For example, in Victoria's chart, we get a 51 and a 42 when we add all those energies together. When you reduce those, you have a 6, 6. So her soul destiny then becomes a 6, 6 frequency. Okay,
And this is
so
again where the visual is going to be really helpful because if you are looking, you'll see that we have our Star of David chart, but then we also have this square um tab, if you will, over to the side. That's not what I'm thinking of. I can't think of the right word. But a square chart essentially, and we've just written out all of the aspects, and then you write kind of column 1 number, column 2 number. So what she's saying is we're going to add up all of our column 1 numbers, and then we're once again going to reduce to the first number that's within 1 to 22, and then you're going to reduce, add up all of your second column numbers, and again reduce them 1 to 22. So again, this, if you're a little bit confused or you're just listening, please take a look at the visual. It helps it to make a lot more sense.
Or if you really can't figure it out, just email us and we'll take care of it for you.
Yeah, come get a reading.
I also want to point out here, if you look at the bottom of this table, it does say dominant vibration 8. What that means is if you have any similar energies on your chart where you have 4 or more of that number aspect, that's going to be a dominant energy that's playing out in your life. And in this chart, Victoria has 4 number 8s. I'm sorry, she's got 5 number 8s, the
Yeah.
8, 8, 8, 8, and the 17, 8.
Yep.
So that's going to make for a more enhanced experience within that 8, 8 energy.
Yeah, you're going to feel a lot more of those energies, maybe experience those more. Typically, right, you're normally going to see a dominant vibration is going to be a single digit number, because as you can see, you have the ability, if you just have a double number 8 8 come up twice, that already puts you at a dominant vibration. But then of course it can also come in as part of the combination with the 17 8. It would be a lot less common to see a double digit number like an 11 or like a 17 be a dominant vibration, because that means you'd have to have 4 17 8s show up in a chart. So most of the time people are going to have a single digit that's a dominant vibration, but they could have 2. And even sometimes if you do have a lot of double numbers in your chart, you could have 3. But not more than that, because you're just running out of aspects. You don't really have any
Now, I
more at
will
that
say
point.
this though. I had read an article one time, I believe it was maybe a few months ago, about how this, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, it was a French couple who had a daughter
Mhm.
and they gave her a name, her full
Oh,
birth name. Did you see?
she's no
I had
Span.
shared this. Spanish?
I had heard
Okay.
about this. They're Spanish and they're like part of the royal family, not
Some,
royal family, like the aristocrats. And her, yes, the Spanish government was like, you can't have a name that is
well,
that
the
long.
name was like 10 different names, like Samantha, Susan, Sharon, Yana, Lauren.
I
I'm
mean, in
using all these S
Spanish,
names.
and it's about,
Totally.
but it's like perpetual grace and the, sort of think
So,
about names of saints sort of thing.
so when I saw that, especially now that I work with the energies of the names, right? This is what we do. It's
Yeah.
like you eat it, you breathe it, you sleep it. It's always going on and playing out in your life. I see this name, and all I thought to myself was, oh my God, I wish I could just run her chart to see how insane these energies are. Because I think when a name is that crazy long, then you probably have more combination letter frequencies where like it could be a possibility that they show up as a dominant vibration.
It could, right? It's not that it's impossible. I have looked up Robin Williams' birth chart. He has a dominant vibration of 10-1, because that's how many 10-1s he has in his chart. It's just
Wow.
that is rare, because I want to say out of there's 7 aspects in total, right? There's the 3 physical karma aspect, or the 3 physical triangle aspects, the 3 spiritual triangle aspects in your soul destiny, 7 aspects. I want to say 5 of his aspects of his birth chart are 10-1.
No way.
Let's just actually take a moment to talk about ethics. Why did you not look up that baby's chart, but I looked up Robin Williams?
Well, listen, being in the work, the answer is very clear. You do not invade somebody's privacy like that who's still living. Now,
Yep.
unless like you have a mother that comes to you and says, look, I want to look at the relationship between me and my daughter, me and my child, me and my husband. In those situations, you can absolutely pull up, because you have permission to pull up their charts and then compare and see how they work together and all of that.
Yeah.
But it's like I hear people say, oh, do you look up your date's soul contract chart? And I'm like, yeah, I would love to. Once I tell them what I do and they get interested, yeah, of course, I'm going to pull it up on the spot and we can go over it together. But
Yes.
ethically, because this person is still alive, I can't just on my own just invade everybody's privacy in my life and look up all the good things and the challenges and what they had to endure and what their personality may be like.
Yeah. The rule of thumb is you don't go looking just out of curiosity, that you either have the person's direct permission to look at their chart, or if for yourself and your relationships or your client and their relationships, they are wanting to look at someone's chart with the intention of using this information to improve their relationship. So a relationship and intention to improve it are key.
Totally.
And we talked about it being privacy for a person who is alive. So when someone passes away, they no longer have an ego. It's not to say it's fair game, but like there's no longer this breach of privacy viewed to be in place, which is why I do commonly, when I hear that a celebrity has passed away, I'm kind of like, okay, now I can be curious because it's not going to be an invasion. But until that point, like I really have that boundary in place. And I know that most practitioners do.
Mm-hmm. Now, should we get into the physical
Yeah,
versus the
let's talk about
spiritual
these two
triangles?
triangles.
Okay, so what will play out mostly in your life? Now, let me take a step back. The main 7 frequencies in your life, these aspects will play out throughout your entire life, even when you change your name,
Mhm.
and we'll get into that, but they will always be present. The triangle that's facing down in orange, for those of you watching, these will show us all your physical aspects that you bring into this reality for you, okay, into this lifetime. The triangle facing up are all your spiritual aspects, okay? The physical triangle then entails your physical karma, talents, and goals, where the spiritual triangle is your spiritual karma, talents, and goals. But the beauty of this is while all of these energies are at play, typically between your birth until your 5th life cycle, right? Which is we're on 7-year life cycles. So that's average about 35 to 42 years old. So from 0 to about 35 years old, that physical triangle is going to be predominant in your life. It's going to shape your childhood. It's going to shape your beliefs. It's going to shape the challenges you've had to face and the gifts that you have like acknowledged and are useful into this lifetime, right? Then, Lauren, what happens at that 5th life cycle? Average 5th life cycle.
Yeah. So we say on average, you start to see a switch in dominance, right? It's now all of these energies are always present. It's just about which are more dominant and are you living out experiencing more. So sometimes someone who is younger, if I'm reading their chart and we start to get into the spiritual triangle, we've started with the physical triangle and they're like, yes, yes. Oh my God, this is a big thing for me. I'm really living through this, and we start to get into the spiritual triangle, and on those energies and aspects they're like, okay, yeah, maybe, yeah, okay. And it's because that it just hasn't started to play as big of a role. Now likewise, when I read for someone who is older, like well over the age of 45, then sometimes when I'm talking about their physical triangle, they're like, I mean, I guess at one point in my life, but I don't really deal with that anymore, because the idea is that we work through these, right? So it kind of goes to show really the purpose of a reading is to help say, hey, this is the roadmap of your life. Let's place you on it. So the analogy I love to give is, you go to a park, to a mall, anywhere you're looking at a map, and there's the "You Are Here" sticker. A reading is the "You Are Here," is establishing the "You Are Here" sticker. Where are you? Because two people could have more or less the same chart and be at very, very different places and working through those energies.
And have experienced them very differently as well.
Yes, how it shows up could be completely different.
Yep. Now, in that 5th year cycle, which is typically the 35 to 42 years old, that's really the moment where most people experience, I guess what you could call like a midlife crisis, right? This is when they're like, I need more value in my life. I want to connect to source better. This is not enough, this earth plane stuff. Like, I need more. So they get married, divorce, have kids, change jobs, switch countries. Like, they have all these huge life changes because they're unsettled. And it's like this earth plane stuff now. It's like, okay, I got it. I did it. I need more. And that's when that spiritual triangle that's facing up, that's when that really starts to kick in. And then that becomes more predominant in your life.
Yeah. And we were even just reflecting on the fact that both of us had spiritual awakenings at the age of 27. So I had a spiritual awakening at the age of 27. It really lined up very nicely with my Saturn return. And for me, I also found this system at that time. And I, saw that spiritual karma number 99, and I started to really see that and had that become forefront in my mind. But with that being said, I can also see how in the past 3 years, there is so much emphasis on the physical karma. And I feel like it's this sense of I can already see where I've grown a lot in those areas, but it's like it's continuing to show up, which is what we talk about when we are working through our karma, our challenges. It's not like you just work through it and you're done. It's a spiral. You continue to face it again from a different angle, from a different perspective. Show us what you've learned, What else do you still need to learn? What else is there left to view? How many different ways can we view this? And so it is interesting because again, I am turning 31 this year. I haven't hit that sort of typical age where you go from the dominance. So there could still be this change that I've yet to experience. So on the one hand, I did feel like, hey, I had a spiritual awakening and I started to see this. I became aware, I had the awareness, so I can see these spiritual triangle numbers, these spiritual frequencies coming up and being active. But I can still see that it's kind of still continuing to round out on the physical triangle of like, we're not done with these lessons yet either.
Right. And
What
it's
about for
like
yourself?
the point that you made, you're always going to get the lessons, but it's like as you heal and grow and learn from each lesson, then as the next lesson of the same frequency comes in, you catch it quicker and you're like, nope, I'm not going on this merry-go-round. I know how to resolve it. I know how to not get engaged into this in a negative aspect. And it's easier for you to get past and not get stuck. You guys, we're not here to get stuck in life. We're here. It's like when you incarnate, your memory gets wiped clean. You remember nothing, you know nothing. And the whole thing is we're on this journey to find our way back to source. And it's like, don't you want to get back there? Right? Assuming that we all do. We all get there at different ages. We all get there in different ways. We all get there in just like a multitude of things that have come together. Now, you said earlier, yeah, we discussed that how random we both had our awakenings at 27, right? Which is a 9-9 when you break that down.
I know. I
But
was
what's
blown
crazy
away.
is I remember in that moment, it completely rocked my world and it rebuilt me into a completely different person. And I remember thinking, oh, I am my best version of myself. I know who I am. I know what I want. And at one point, years later, I had gone on a date with somebody and he had asked me about myself. And I said, I really love where I'm at personally. Like I feel like I'm like good. You know what I'm saying? And then I hit that 40-year mark and it was like everything I knew, everything I thought I was going to do, my direction in life. It was like the universe was like, no, girlfriend, we're going to reshake things up. Everything you thought you knew is out the window. You're going to walk in blind faith for a while. You're going to heal what you need to heal. And then the gifts are on the other side. And I had no idea I was on a healing journey. I had no idea why it was happening. But then getting into this work, you're like, oh, well, this is why this makes sense now. I'm in my 5th-year cycle. And of course, the shit's going to hit the fan for me to really step into gear and go into the direction that my soul wants me to go into, which is such a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. After you kind of go through the work, you can really appreciate it. It's really tough when you're going through it for sure.
Shall we get a little bit more into
Yes.
actually what the different aspects are? So we've been talking about karma, talents, and goals. What does that mean? What is your karma?
Oh, I can answer this. Your karma are your challenges in life, right? They shape your beliefs. They shape how you handle things. They shape how you think life is. It's all these challenging things that you've had to go through from a baby until whatever age you're at now. Like it shapes you into whatever your belief system is and the tough things we had to go through. And I think the beauty of this work is you realize that you weren't dealt a shit hand or you didn't just get stuck with like all this terrible stuff. We all experience things that shape us in a negative way, that shape us into who we are today. But it was like it was meant to happen for you. You were in that frequency. Your soul was driving for you to go through this experience, not to get stuck in it, but to learn and grow from it. So that's your
Yeah.
that's your karma.
Well, I would also like to add, more than it just being your challenges, it's your lessons. These are
Thank
the
you.
lessons your soul has come to learn. And how do we learn lessons? Through navigating obstacles and the challenges. So it's not to say your soul came to learn these specific or face these specific challenges. Your soul came to learn these lessons. And that lesson, again, how we talk about these can manifest differently, that can manifest as a different obstacle or a different challenge for different people. But a lot of times the lesson is the same. With that being said, though, two people can have the same number in the same aspect, right? Two people could have physical karma 8 8. And I like to think about the 8 being a menu. Um, items on a menu. You could pick different items. You can go to the same menu as someone and not eat the same dinner. So you can choose very, very different lessons. And even if you have the same lesson that you're learning, like how to ask for help, that can be manifesting in your life as different challenges and obstacles that you're facing to get to that lesson.
Right. We'll experience it differently. But
Mhm.
let's not move on from karma until we say the most important thing about karma, which is within your karma are your greatest gifts, right?
Yeah.
So our biggest challenges, and you think about this in your life, when have you grown the most? When you've had the toughest challenge in your life,
Yeah.
right?
You grow in the
Hopefully,
discomfort.
yes, right? And it's like the oh my gosh, tell me the flower that grows in the mud, the lotus.
The lotus. I
Okay,
was
that's
like,
what
where
it
are you
is. Like
going with this?
this beautiful, gorgeous flower grows.
Yes.
It grows in. It starts off in the mud, in the yuckiness, and in this like environment where you're like nothing can grow in here, but then it blossoms into this beautiful thing.
As a California native, I really like to use the analogy of, imagine that you have, a big, big stone. It's really big, but inside of it is gold, right? Hello, gold rush. And you are chipping away, you're chipping away, you're chipping away. You are learning your lessons, you are facing your challenges, you're facing your obstacles. And the more that you chip away at this rock, this challenge, underneath, eventually you get to gold. So hidden within your karma is talent, right? And it's not to say your talents that are on the chart, that's a different aspect, but that you literally do transmute and turn, water into wine, if you will. You turn your challenge. I always like to say, at the other side of the lesson, it's like on the other side of the rainbow is the gold. It's like the lesson is a talent. You have now learned, you have this gift now.
And what a beautiful gift it is.
Yeah. And so that leads us very nicely into talking about, while your karma turns into talents, you also then come into this life with a set of talents to help you face your obstacles and work through your challenges. And even though it's a talent, it is not like an open door. I kind of use the analogy of, it's like it's still a locked door. You still need to find the key. And we all know people in our lives who are so resistant to lessons. They may never unlock their talents in their life because they spend their whole life running away from the lesson. And it's like, rather than this huge rock, it's like you just had to put the key in the lock and turn it. It wasn't going to be as challenging as your challenges, but there's still a little something to learn. You didn't just get to open that door right away. So some people can get stuck. And so my whole advice, my big advice to people is always just to lean in to a lesson rather than to resist it.
Right. And I think too, some people, whatever their talent is and their talent aspect, because we think so like earth plane, we just think, well, that's just something I'm just naturally good at. But it's like, and they think, well, everybody has that gift or that talent or that ability. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, it's very specific to you. And it shows up so strongly for you. Like, for example, in this chart, physical talent is the 4-4. I'm sorry, physical talent is the 9-9. So it's like you have the power to do and accomplish and create anything you want to. Most people are not like that. Most people have a fear of failure. Most people don't have the drive, don't have the vision, don't have the courage, don't have the power. But you actually have the power to create the life that you want,
Yeah.
right? And it's just something that some people just don't even realize that that's a gift they have, but you do. And it's so beautiful.
And, with that being said, because all of the numbers bring their own energies, sometimes you have a talent that's not all that much useful for your specific challenge. It happens. Some are going to be better suited to help you work through your challenges and to reach your goals than others. And so that's again part of the benefit of a reading is to really understand, okay, this is what this number brings and this is how it's, helping and this is what it can do for you. And again, I love to use analogies. So the analogies I kind of tend to say is it's like, if you're on like a backpacking trip or somewhere and it's like you're out in the desert, but you brought all the tools for thinking you were going to be like paddling in the middle of the ocean. You know what I mean? Like the tools that you need for those different places are going to be different. So if you bring the wrong supplies, you're suddenly like, well, this isn't going to be very helpful for my survival. So it's an important thing to kind of look at and to see, especially again with a reader, for us as professional readers to be able to kind of maybe go to a deeper level, because on the surface, you're sometimes like, how am I going to use this? So you need a professional who can be like, okay, this might not be what you were expecting to have in your toolbox for the situation, but here's how it can still be useful to you.
Yep. And then here's our segue. How your talents then help you achieve your goals,
Right.
right? And the goal aspect on your chart, whether it's physical or spiritual, is all about where does your soul want you to go? That could be career oriented. That could be like in your life, like which direction are you looking to go? What are you here to achieve and accomplish? Right? So, your talent, depending on what that number is, your talent will then either help you move towards that goal easier, maybe, or maybe it will have no effect,
Yeah.
right? So then the beauty of this
We-
chart is when you start actively working on your karmic elements, your gifts, your talents, and your goals, what starts happening then is that soul destiny starts to spark up and light up. And now all of a sudden it's like becoming an integral part of your life, right? So it's like the work that you do on the other 6 aspects feed into bringing your soul destiny to life.
And more than that as well, it's important to note that at the beginning of your life, whatever your soul destiny number is, it's acting like a third karmic point. I actually typically will really picture that in my mind as though it was a third triangle in between the physical triangle and the spiritual karma. Or yeah, the physical karma and the spiritual triangle. Like you had a third triangle over there and it sits there at the beginning of your life. So whatever the challenges are of the numbers that are your soul destiny, you are experiencing those and working through those just like you're working through your other 2 karmic aspects. And it actually takes you working through enough of that number, enough of that challenge, kind of transmuting enough of that karma for it to really move into, for me, I will say it moves into the soul destiny position, right? It moves into the center of the chart. So it's not even just that. I mean, as Yana says, yes, you need to be working through all these numbers, and that helps to feed into and go towards your soul destiny, which is like an overarching life purpose. But more than that, you're also working through whatever that energy is itself, whatever its challenges are, before you're getting to that larger life purpose that's held within.
Mm-hmm. And I'm very partial to a 6-6 energy and in the soul contract. I mean, in the soul destiny, it's just like it's giving me life. It's all this creativity, right? And being able to take a tangible nothing and turn it into something. Like, how fabulous is that?
And I think that's actually the fact that this example has a 6-6, I think is a really good example to have, because the soul destiny of 6-6 is about becoming being the vessel for the creativity of source. And I've had that come up in clients' charts and they're like, what does that mean? And the thing that I've sort of said is I'm like, well, it's not something that you do, it's something that you become. And I think we so often hear life purpose, right? And like soul destiny. And we think that it's something that we achieve, but so much more than that, it's something that we become and kind of can actively choose to be or not be every day. And you can we talk so often with this chart, are you in alignment, right? So you can kind of just look at your day and be like, today, was I aligned with the purpose of being a vessel for creative energy? Was I aligned with that today or not? And so it's not one day you achieve it and that's done and you achieve your life purpose and that's it. It's like it's not a one and done deal. It's not something that you do one day. It's so much more. Every day you can reflect on it. Did I do that today? Did I not? And really at the end of your life to look back and be like, how did I do that? How did I live that in my life? So I really want to emphasize that because I think we get so focused sometimes on thinking, will I achieve my life purpose? And I mean, there are a couple of the soul destinies where there is some aspect of achieving. You can see, did you do that or not? Like the 14-5 soul destiny, for example. So often they write a book. At the end of your life, you'll know if you wrote a book or not. But it's not to say that if you didn't write a book, you didn't kind of
Right.
achieve the purpose, because it's also about discovering who they are.
Hmm.
That is their life purpose, is to discover who they are. And so very often as a result, because the 5 has this writer energy, they end up writing a book to share what the journey was of discovering themselves. So if you discovered yourself but didn't write a book, that is still the life purpose being achieved.
Right. You didn't fail at that.
Yeah.
So this, you guys, this is exactly how we create a soul contract chart. This is what it looks like. This is how we think about it as we look at all the main frequencies that are playing out for you and how they feed into each other, how they help or hinder or have no effect to each other. And for us, this is how we're able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah. And I do want to emphasize again, we mentioned this at the beginning. This is for your name at birth. And we kind of mentioned, you probably have other names that you've used, whether you got married or myself. I've never changed my name, but I don't use my first, middle, and last name in my day-to-day life. So any other names you've had, we call these overlays. And they do play a role as well. But just like in astrology, you can have other charts, but none of them supersede your natal chart, your birth chart. The birth chart is always going to be the primary focus, the primary intention. And any other name that you've had, again, they play a role and they bring in energies. But really, the role that they play is in support of you working through whatever the energies are in your birth chart. And so they are never going to supersede what your birth chart is. So that's why, we're always going to look at that first. It's always going to be the primary intention. And then we can look at the other information and say, well, what other talents are you bringing in to help you work through these challenges? And also, what other challenges might you be facing that aren't coming up just from looking at your birth chart? So they play a role. It's certainly something to look at and consider. But if you've changed your name and you're like, I haven't used my birth name in 40 years, it is still the primary lesson and intention of your soul.
Listen, the birth name that I was given on my birth certificate was never used a day in my life. And actually, it's funny
Really?
because so I'm Greek and my brother and my sister who were born before me, their birth certificate names are, while spelled in English, it's the Greek version of our names.
Mhm.
Well, when I looked in my birth certificate, mine was the English version of my names, which, like I said, what has never been used. And I remember telling my mom, why would you write my name in English and everyone else is in Greek? And she's like,
Mm.
I don't know. Like she, in her mind, she's like, I don't know. But now doing this work, I know, okay, we intuitively send this name to our mothers, our fathers, so it could set up this life path for us. So now I laugh at it because I understand it. I understand why I was given that name.
And you really do want to check because we have, heard of people who, in order to prepare for a reading, go and check their birth certificate. And you're probably thinking to yourself, I know what my name is. But then it's like, oh, there's actually a letter off. This is a slightly different spelling than I've ever used in my life. And so people sometimes are surprised. They actually don't know what's on their birth certificate.
Right.
They're like, they know their name, but you might be surprised that what's on your birth certificate is a little bit different. And that is really what we want to look at. And again, this is to say, this is where we can do the comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so often the name that is written on the birth certificate resonates so much more. There's a reason for it. There's a reason that the nurse misheard your mom, right? Your dad wasn't paying attention and wrote it down wrong. There's a reason for it, for all of it.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I think we've given you a lot to think about today. Once again, just want to emphasize the importance, if you've just been listening to this episode, really to hop onto YouTube just to get a sense of the visualizations that we had to help that make a little bit more sense if there's any confusion. And as always, you can go ahead and book a reading with Yana or myself. To please go and follow us on Instagram, the Let's Talk Vibes podcast, or you can find our website, the ltvpodcast.com.
Yes. And you guys, as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast. It is the easiest and best way to support us. We appreciate it so much, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.